Hello, welcome to another Drive-In Double Feature podcast. I'm Ryan.
I'm Nathan.
And this is the podcast where we talk about two movies a week every Tuesday and Thursday. But before I get into anything at all, we have a Patreon over at patreon.com/Drive-In Double Feature podcast. Just a couple of fun games, fun conversations, fun topics that you can only hear for paying $5 a month over on our Patreon at patreon.com/Drive-In Double Feature podcast. This is exclusive stuff here. I mean, you think this stuff is funny? You think this stuff is good? Wait till you go over to the Patreon.
Just you wait.
Good stuff over there that you have to, it's so good you got to pay for it. But anyway, if you choose not to, don't worry. I'll still be here every Tuesday and Thursday for you free of charge. But today, going back to Toho and for another kaiju movie that's not Godzilla, but it's kind of a sequel. And it is 1966 War of the Gargantuas. And that is directed by Ishirō Honda, the man himself.
He's back.
He's back again. And like I said, this thing was originally a sequel to Frankenstein versus Baragon. And this was originally called The Two Frankensteins. So, but it's a little fuzzy, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Right now, it's just, like I said, this was originally going to be a sequel to that movie. Where you last remember this movie, we did Frankenstein versus Baragon. We covered it on one of our previous episodes leading up to Destroy All Monsters. Where that movie ends is one of the most infamous scenes that we've talked about, where the Frankenstein monster gets dragged underwater he defeats Baragon pretty definitively, like about as much as you could defeat a monster. And out of nowhere, an octopus shows up and drags him underwater, and he dies.
That's it, right?
That's it. Yeah. and the movie, they're like, oh, well, that's too bad. But this one kind of picks up where it left off, sort of. But Nathan, have you ever heard of this movie before? I got to ask.
Well, kinda, not really. Not until I met you and we went to that Godzilla Day thing, and they had the spices that wore the Gargantua. That was my first time ever hearing it. So about a year ago now.
Right, absolutely. And this one, because that one, it was there was a vegetable rub that was the gyra. And we had the chicken rub, the meat rub, which was Sanda. And I'll tell you this, the gyra rub tastes a little better than the Sanda one.
Take it back right now.
I'm full team green. but anyway, the way I heard about this movie was actually, so I do love monster movies a lot, and I would try to see as many as I could, but so I wasn't like super well versed in it. Like I loved Godzilla, but about, I guess, 10 years ago or whatever, but it was I was watching the Oscars, and it was like all these like really famous people talking about like a really moving cinema experience, or like or maybe it was like the first movie they remember seeing at the movie theater. And Brad Pitt's he's like, oh yes, I remember going to see the Gargantuas, and I think we might actually have a little clip of that here.
I remember seeing a film called The Gargantuas, I believe. And it was the good Gargantua and the bad Gargantua. At the end of it, the good Gargantua had to sacrifice himself to defeat the bad Gargantua and rid the world of evil.
So yeah, I heard that at the Oscars, and I was just like, really? Huh? And I went and I found a copy and I watched it, and history ever since.
That's funny. So you watched it because of Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt recommended this to you.
Brad Pitt opened up a whole new world of kaiju to me.
Well, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah, and in my eyes, Brad Pitt has never done anything wrong ever.
Yeah.
Never. I don't know. I don't know what else he could have done to
No,
be faded.
I don't think so. I think everybody likes him. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, nothing. Don't read any of the papers.
No.
So it wasn't a childhood favorite of mine like all the other ones were, but this one was definitely one I watched when in my 20s, and it was a pretty good time then. And I'll say it's a pretty decent time now.
Mhm.
I'll say this, I thought it was better than the original movie.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I like it. It's better than some of the other movies we've watched recently. This one's
Yeah,
pretty solid.
better than Atragon, the last month's one.
Yes, yeah.
But
Even the dubbed version, which we'll get
yeah,
into.
so this movie, so just how it starts is, when I say it's a loose sequel to it, it's really kind of confusing about how these two movies connect, because you think it would be kind of like it picks up where it left off type of thing, but it's supposed to be these two Frankenstein monsters were created from the original cells of that Frankenstein monster, which was in the other movie. And that one, I mean, it looks like a Frankenstein. It's got like the flat top head. It looks like a person. It does look like a Frankenstein. These new monsters, it's like a cross between King Kong and Frankenstein, I would say. Like,
Yeah, it's definitely not the same look as they were before. They're actually kind of chubby too. They got like stomachs to them, which I kind of love.
Nathan, come on, we don't shame here.
We don't shame. I'm just saying they put on a little bit of weight. Not saying that's a bad thing.
They got a couple little dad bods.
Yeah, there we go. That's the nice way to put it.
Yeah, but they so how it starts is a giant octopus comes out of the water. So it may have been the same octopus from Frankenstein versus Baragon,
Yeah,
for all we know.
And this other cell version of the original Frankenstein is out for revenge. I just have to say I was really confused when I started up this movie, because me and Ryan do share the same Criterion account. Sorry, Criterion. And it's the podcast. But anyway,
and Nathan will tell you the password right now so you can share.
No, but it was in the middle of the scene where the octopus was attacking like the ship, which this movie starts pretty fast, but like it started so fast, and I was like, what the heck? How was this movie just in the middle of an action scene? No, I was just in the middle. And it was dubbed too. I was even more confused. I was ready to watch the version.
So when like the part I watched, like you jumped on the same part that like I was watching?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, okay, so full disclosure. So there are two different versions of this movie, and there's an English dub. Well, there's two English dubs, which I'll get into again later.
Oh my god.
So there's that, and then there's also a Japanese dub, and the Japanese dub, so 9 times out of 10, Criterion for these movies will put the actual Japanese version like the way it was originally seen, and that's how I want to see it, because that's usually the version I haven't seen ever. Like, because usually I'm big dub version because that was the only thing available at the time. But so I started watching it, and I got like 5 minutes in, and the guy's like, it's very clearly dubbed, and yes. I'm like, oh, this is not. I kept looking for the language options. There was none. I didn't have a DVD of it, so I could switch audio tracks or anything. So I'm like, damn. So I had to go to the Internet Archive, and I found the Japanese version, which also was annoying too, because I was trying to stream it onto my TV, but since the subtitles are not hard coded to the video itself, I would try to play it on my TV and there was no subtitles, so I had to watch the whole movie on my tablet.
Oh god, good thing Ishirō Honda's dead. He probably rolled over in his grave.
I don't know. I got a phone call from David Lynch after that.
Yeah, I know. I bet. But no, the dub version was the subtitle version was hard to find, at least on my end. I did use the same Internet Archive, but the Internet Archive even had the dub version. It must be something with Criterion, because I want to say there was one movie before that we had to watch dubbed on the Criterion Channel. It may have been King Kong versus Godzilla that they only had the dubbed version.
I think no, it was the King Kong Escapes, because remember,
okay.
yeah, because King Kong versus Godzilla, the Japanese one, was on like the weird like eighth disc of the
That's
Godzilla.
right. They like hid it for some reason.
Right. I don't know why they didn't put it on the same disc, but whatever. But the this one, so I did watch the whole movie on my tablet, and I did then today actually, I before the podcast, it's like let me just throw on the dub just to see, and I watched maybe about 30 minutes of it, and the dub is not very good, I'll say. No. It's sometimes I can kind of, but these voices that they did for this one are just so dull. Just like very monotone, very like da 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 da. I'm like I could not deal with it. So
I get that. Luckily, I think what makes this movie work a lot less
is the song.
Is the song. Yeah, the word stuck in my throat. No, it is the there's not a lot of people in it. Like there's people, but there's more monster fight, and the people are definitely the B plot of all of this, which I think makes it just a little bit better.
Yeah, and so there's the giant Frankenstein monster comes in, he destroys the boat, and then they're like, oh, what could that have been? And the army is like, oh, we need to contact the Frankenstein research team. Like there's so many Frankensteins now that they created a Frankenstein research team. They so what happened was there's a group of scientists, and one of them, the lead character of the movie, is played by Russ Tamblyn.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Who Oscar nominated Russ Tamblyn, and who was also in The Haunting and West Side Story, like one of the most well-known musicals in the world.
Yeah, he's the leader of the Jets, right? I believe.
Yeah, he's the male lead for Natalie Wood, so isn't he? Or am I?
Yes. Yeah.
Or am I right?
Yes, you are correct. Yes. So yeah, he must have been like in a bad spot in his career, or he just loved Frankenstein.
So the story goes at the time is that one of the production sides of this movie is that Ishirō Honda and him did not get along at all.
Really?
And like allegedly, Russ Tamblyn read the script for this movie and said like the script was horrible, and he just said like, I'm going to do my own lines for this movie. So he was just improvise, which like now, like a lot of movies now, I mean, there's behind the scenes stuff. It's like, oh yeah, we improvise lines. Like a lot of comedies do this type of thing, and it's just a real kind of like free flowing thing. But in Japan, like I think a lot of it is just like when you do like, I'm going to improvise these lines, I think it's seen as very disrespectful to the screenwriter. Like,
yeah,
like you're going against everything I wrote. And so he was just kind of making up whatever words he wanted in the script, and it was just very frustrating. Pretty much everyone on set said he was a prima donna, and even Ishirō Honda's assistant was quoted as saying that Russ Tamblyn was an asshole. So wasn't very well liked, and I think this was I don't know why he did this movie, but if I had to take a guess, it was probably because this might have been the only route that he could take, or whatever, or they just paid him a bunch of money, because I think they wanted to get Nick Adams to come back and do more roles like that, because Nick Adams, of course, was in Invasion of the Astro Monster and other ones, but for whatever reason, he didn't come back. I think he was dealing with some issues at the time.
We've talked about that.
Because I think he was pretty much dead, like not that long after this movie came out.
Oh wow. Yeah, and I know this is an American Japan co-production, right? That this was funded by America as well.
Yeah. This was done by the producer Henry Saperstein, who
Yep.
also helped produce a lot of the other ones, which had American spin on it, which is why Russ Tamblyn is in this movie, because they wanted an American star in the movie, so that way it would be a lot easier to have it make more money in America, so that would become more accessible. One funny bit, so like I said, there's two English versions of this movie.
Mhm.
So there's the American version, which is the movie that came out in the 60s and was on cassette tape, but apparently there's also an international dub too, which was done by a separate company.
Mhm.
And that's the version that we heard and the Criterion, and the one that's widely available online, because that one is licensed by Janus Films.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
but there is an American version, which supposedly Russ Tamblyn's audio in the original version became lost, so he had to come back and like redub all of his lines, and
Oh my god.
and they didn't, and since he improvised so much, he had to like remember what he said, like, and like read off of his lip movements. And
Oh
I didn't
wow.
and I didn't hear it in the original version, but that's why like his character just sounds like so disinterested, and just because he's so
You,
mad.
well, I was watching it. I did watch all of the dub version. And I was like at first like, oh, so they got him in to redub his voice and it still seemed off. So that story makes complete sense. Like, or is that version, the international version, also dubbed?
It's a
Right.
different. I believe that's a different actor in that
Oh,
version.
that one. Okay, so it doesn't even sound like him. Horrible.
Because I was listening. I was like, I don't think that's his voice,
Yeah, I
and
don't think so.
that does make sense. Is like they had to get somebody, a completely other American team. So it might have been a team that maybe, English wasn't their forte or whatever, but it just very, very dry dialogue, very, very dry acting on the dub
Yes.
version, which is why I usually tend to watch the Japanese version, because it's their natural native tongue, so they can emote a lot more.
Yeah.
But anyway, going back to the plot of the movie, originally this was supposed to be a standalone movie, and that's the way Ishirō Honda wanted this movie, is that he wanted it to be um, like a standalone movie that did it on his own. But a lot of the producers, they wanted a direct sequel to Frankenstein versus Baragon, so they kind of worked it out, like kind of met in the middle, where it's like a very loose sequel, because they do say they are Frankenstein monsters in the movie, but they don't really mention the original Frankenstein one. They kind of just vaguely mention that there was something else, or like these monsters were created, because when they say like the monster was attacking the ship, they're like, oh, that's nothing like our Frankenstein monster. And
Yeah.
because they're referring to the good one, the brown one that they ended up raising. And like that one died a long time ago. But apparently, what happened, because I had to research like how were these things created, and
Yeah.
supposedly it was cells that were left on in the mountains, which is how the brown one was made, came off the original one.
Mm.
And that's how that one was made, and that's why that was found in the mountains, and why it wanted its natural habitat was the mountains. And then more cells from the brown one broke off and fell into the sea and
Okay.
attached itself to a piece of plankton, which is why it's green. And
Oh, how
because
come this is this explained in the movie?
they do kind of say it, because there's like Russ Tamblyn kind of makes a joke, like, because they make a whole deal about how like that couldn't be our Frankenstein
Yeah.
monster, because it's living in the ocean. Like our Frankenstein lives in the mountains. It loves the mountains. and
Hmm.
and they're like, and Russ Tamblyn later like makes a joke when he's talking to the female love interest or whatever. And he's like, well, maybe he fell in love with a whale. And he's like, wait a minute. And it just kind of goes into this explanation that it was like attached to like some type of sea creature. But I believe
Gotcha.
they refer to it as plankton. But that's why he looks so green, is because he
Hmm.
lives in the water. But that's the deal with these movies. This one is that one lives the ocean, hates bright lights, and the other one lives out in the mountains. But like I said, they what they kind of say though in the beginning, because they call up Russ Tamlin and they're like, "Your Frankenstein monster's attacking," and they're like, "No, that's impossible. That our Frankenstein died on Mount Fuji," which I guess they're saying like the one that they raised ran off into the mountains and died, at, with zero proof apparently. But they said the one funny part in the dub is when he says, "That's impossible. He's 100% dead." And then all these reporters show up immediately later and say, "We want to get a comment on the Frankenstein monster. Is he alive?" And he says, "Maybe."
Yeah, which is like you wouldn't tell reporters that. Like,
well, he just did like a complete 180. He's like completely like that. It's dead. It's dead. There's no way. And now it's like, yeah, maybe he's alive.
It could happen. Yeah, he's dead. Maybe no, he's alive. Just a quick through the motions.
Yeah. So, but in the American version too, they also like they don't like in the original American dub, they don't even mention the word Frankenstein. They're just called Gargantuas. Like they're called Gargantuas. Like, and they don't even have names. Like in this movie, later in the movie, they do name them. The good one is called Sanda, and the bad one's called Gyra.
Mm-hmm.
And the American one, they just call it brown Gargantua and green Gargantua.
Really? It's that easy.
Yeah, why don't they just call them colors? What are they, stupid?
Yeah, right. Like, why we gotta give them names? Sanda, Gyra. Too much to remember.
But yeah, that's so very loose sequel. Like I said, just and after that they don't really mention any other past connections. It's just there's no mention of the original Frankenstein. But the other Frankenstein, it does go on the prowl and start attacking because Santa hasn't showed up yet. Oh, I do want to mention before that they do show a flashback of the little.
Yes, with the little.
He looks like a monkey, but it's clearly like a child or a little person that's
in like a fursuit. Like
that face on that creature was so disturbing.
I laughed out loud right when I saw it. I was like, wow, they really, because the Gargantuas, they don't look amazing, but they have a look to it. That look, it looks so bad. The little baby version.
They're feeding it milk and food.
Oh my god, and they feed it milk and it has just milk like pouring down its face. It's gross. It's really gross.
It's so nasty.
Yes.
I very bad looking, but I had to mention that.
Yeah, of course. And this is told from the point of view. I'm pretty sure the woman, our female lead in this movie, is returning. Correct? She's like, or at least I've seen her in other Godzilla movies.
It wouldn't surprise me if she's playing a completely different character. I'm sorry, her character wasn't that memorable enough for me to remember her name. Sorry.
Ryan, come on. No, I get it. I got the actress here, Kumi Mizuno, which that name rings very familiar to me.
No, but she's in pretty much everything. So she was in Frankenstein versus Baragon.
Okay.
But again, like I said, completely different character. She's Dr. Suko Togami in Frankenstein versus Baragon, and the War of the Gargantua. She's Akime.
Oh yes, Akime. How could I forget her name? She's so important.
Yeah. So, but she's in a lot of them. She's in Invasion of the Astro Monster, Ebera, bunch of kaiju movies.
Okay, cool.
But go ahead.
She more works as like a King Kong type of deal, where our good Gargantua Sanda kind of has a relationship with her, saves her, looks fondly upon her.
Yeah, they have a little bit of a thing going on, but I will say, like this, would you say this one? Like it's probably one of the more brutal versions of a kaiju because this Gyra character, like normally, you see these monsters just destroying buildings, or at worst, you see them step on somebody.
Yeah.
Gyra full on when he runs into Tokyo to destroy, he you see him actually eating somebody. Like,
yeah, I was really surprised that he like reaches in and grabs someone and eats them, and it falls out of his mouth. Yeah, I agree. It's a little brutal. This Gyra guy, he does a little more damage. Actually, I think a lot of the damage he does cause is really good. Actually, all the miniature work in this, I think that's what kind of elevated this movie a little bit for me. Is the miniature work is really good. And you know how cool it was to see that scene that's been stolen from this movie for real, the one with the lasers and the satellites that I've seen like multiple times before. It's from this movie, so it's cool now.
it's actually an original scene.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's the scene where, because they do have like the little laser cannon that they brought out in other movies, and you clearly see they reused it, but it's Gyra running through trees and are shooting a bunch of trees, but they always use it as like a standalone for like other monsters, even though none of them look like Gyra at all.
No.
but yeah, that's what this movie is from, and we don't really see Sanda, like I said, until about like halfway through the movie, because Gyra's kind of going on the warpath. They kind of get it. They kind of figure out that he does not like bright lights, so they have to use bright lights to kind of ward him off. And there's a really cool shot that I actually liked. There's another fishing boat scene where it's like a father and son are on their fishing boat, and they're throwing out like nets and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden, like the dad looks down, and then you just see Gyra like underwater, like through that. Like I actually I like that. That was a cool shot. Like I hadn't seen anything like that yet in one of these movies.
No, I totally agree. I think that was a really cool like shot, and I really like where this movie goes in the middle. And I think that's why not only Brad Pitt, but there's multiple people that caught. Like I think Tarantino really loved this movie. I think it's this plot is what gets people. Is Sanda does show up and save him, and it becomes kind because they're brothers technically, and it's a movie about them and like what to do. Like his brother's obviously a killer and can't be stopped, and Sanda has to deal with that pain. And it's kaiju. It's literally monsters dealing with this. There's more emotion here than usual.
Well, I didn't think he realized his brother was a killer at that point. And,
gotcha.
And because what we find out, they're kind of teaming up, and Sanda saves him from being almost killed by the army, and he kind of get to the side, and then there's like a weird scene too where there's these like hippie backpackers kind of.
Yeah, is it that scene where they're like, oh, the young people will roam the forests, and just like in the days of World War II with Hitler, which is a really odd way to put it.
Yeah, well, because like Gyra and Sanda had like caused destruction, and it's like these hikers were out in the wilderness, just kind of it's like haha, like having a good time, and they said, oh, this is just like when Nazi Germany captured Paris, and you would see young people at cafes the next day. I'm like, stop.
Yeah, exactly. We don't need to talk about this.
But yeah, that's kind of what they were going for. But we kind of mentioned it earlier, because I don't want to get too far away from this, because it's already happened in the plot. But there's a nighttime scene, and there's a scene of this woman at the top of this building, and she's having a little sorry, Nathan, there's something stuck in my throat.
Oh, can you get it out?
Yeah, let me get the words out stuck from my throat. But
maybe you need to sing for 3 minutes.
So yeah, let me do that right now. There's I think this is probably the scene that I think I hear about the most from this movie.
I didn't know it happened.
I knew it was coming up. I remember the scene, but honestly I forgot which movie it was, and I was like, I wonder when this scene's gonna come up. And when it came up again, I was like, there it was. But it's this woman. She's in a yellow dress. she's singing on a stage, and they play an entire musical number of her singing the words. The words were stuck in my throat,
Mm-hmm.
and
it's beautiful, beautiful music.
But yeah, it goes on for a while.
Yes.
And
but she gets what's coming to her for taking over the movie.
well, yeah, I mean, she doesn't die. Oh, we don't know that.
True.
But yeah, Gyra comes in. But it is funny because you're watching the movie and there's very clearly a green screen behind her. Like it's very noticeable. You're like, okay, the monster's going to show up here. But and of course, Gyra does show up. He picks her up and he does drop her. So,
but
we don't know if she's dead or not. But she did fall far away.
But for real, do you know what the story is behind this? Why is this in the movie? Is it for any reason at all?
I don't know about the song personally, but I was trying to like, who is this woman is what I was wondering. And her name is Kip Hamilton.
Okay.
And she is the sister-in-law for Carol Burnett.
Oh, really? Okay.
Didn't really have a successful career. She was in a bunch of TV shows like The Virginian, couple of Western movies. I guess her most famous role is that she was in The Unforgiven, a John Huston directed movie. Not as
I've seen that movie.
Well, she was in that. You don't remember her from that movie?
I don't. I watched it not long ago on Laserdisc.
She was the one who couldn't speak because the words were stuck in her throat.
I really, that kills an acting career. Maybe in silent films it would have worked.
But I do want to ask you a serious, like, do you think how is the music?
Oh, the song, the song's not bad. I actually don't mind the song. I was hearing it, I was like, this is fine. I mean, is it needed in the movie? No. You sent me a clip of James Rolfe, who does Monster Madness, and he was like, "Oh, it's the worst. It hurts my ears." No, it's not a bad song.
I mean, it's not great, but I'm just like, yeah, it's from the '60s. Who cares? But but no, I had to mention that because that scene has been parodied in like other movies. I know, so but it is kind of funny. But anyway, like I said, going back to the movie, those hippies kind of show up, and then Gyra eats them while Sanda is away. And then Sanda comes back. Gyra is like taking a nap, like after eating a big meal, and he looks down and he sees all these little clothes like on the ground, and he kind of puts two and two together, and he's just like, "Oh wow!" And then starts beating up Gyra, and they just end up fighting the rest of the movie.
Yeah, it's a brotherly fight type of movie, and it goes into land, and they don't care who's around. They take out the military with them. And this is the point where I feel like the human plot really gets put to the side. There is stuff for them to do because the leading lady, she gets hurt at one point. She's in the hospital, and that's probably the most of her plot line, really.
Yeah, she was trying to go in there to protect Sanda because the military is like, we got to kill both of them. So there's like the scene where like Sanda and Gyra are fighting, and the military is like, we got to go in and stop them. And Russ Tamlin's like, no, like let's wait it out. And they're like, and it just ends up causing even more destruction. So he just made like a really stupid mistake doing that.
Exactly. No, we need to make this movie longer. Please just wait it out.
But yeah, they end up fighting for the Hirō Nakajima. He was playing Gyra.
Oh, okay.
And he said that this is actually one of his favorite monster characters to play because the suit he can actually move in the suit for once, and it's not like
a human form.
It's a human form. He's definitely probably one of the more agile fights that we've seen, where it actually looks like two people fighting, and definitely not like two people in these rubber suits that just can't move, like trying to hit each other awkwardly. But
it's like grappling, like we actually see some like them holding each other and everything. And maybe that's what helps this movie out, because I do think the fights are good. I think all the fighting sections are really fun to watch.
Yeah, and it works. It works really well. Definitely one of the better fights that we've seen in one of these movies, I'll say.
Yeah.
And I don't think I mentioned it yet. So what do you think of the Gargantua's look? I wanted to ask you that.
It's weird. I like it. I actually like the way they look a lot. I won't say it's like perfect. Their suit looks like it's falling apart, kind of, but I think that's just part of the design. They kind of look like they're leaking. Their skin is leaking off, but
Yeah,
I kind of like it. It adds to like the Frankenstein look.
I'm not really too keen on like all the fur, like, but
Yeah.
the fur is a little too much for me. But I do like their face. Like Gyra's got like a face that just doesn't move ever, and
Yeah.
it looks so crazy. But I do like how they're different colors and everything. I do like their heads that have like the flat top, like Frankenstein monsters do.
hmm
Um,
Their teeth are horrible. They need to go see a dentist soon.
yeah, they should. I think that'd be a good kaiju monster, like a giant dentist monster, like a giant drill.
Oh man! And then they're trying to just clean Godzilla's teeth.
That sounds like one of the monsters like that guy would make in the Godzilla versus Gigan, like a stern mother monster or
That's right. A dentist monster. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of the plan. That's right.
yeah, that's on par with that. But
hmm
they do eventually fight, and a giant volcano ends up swallowing them both, and they get engulfed in the flames. And
We'll never
they
see
kind of
them again, right?
no, we don't.
Oh, okay.
But they do end it like kind of like on a well that they're surely maybe they're alive, maybe they're not. They
Yeah,
kind of go with that road again, and like just to kind of leave their options open, I suppose, but nothing really official that we'd see the Gargantuas again.
gotcha.
Um, but I'm gonna say, not a bad movie. I thought um, the human plot line, not the best, but not the worst we've seen either. There's at least some meat there.
hmm
Um, I dug the monster fighting scenes. Not my favorite one of the kaiju ones that we've seen overall, but definitely a lot better than some of the other ones we've seen.
No, I agree. I think this one's fun. It's a solid one. I like the Gargantuas. I think they're charismatic kaiju, and I like that. I'm pretty much mirroring what you said with the human plot. Not really important, but it's not important to the plot. It's not like some of the other ones where the human plot takes up way too much screen time. This is probably the right amount of screen time.
Yeah, it's about right, and like you said, it does have a lasting legacy, as you said. Quentin Tarantino, Guillermo del Toro, Tim Burton also really liked the movie as well. Just
Oh boy.
I, it's crazy to think like this one weird kaiju movie just like had so much
Yeah.
influence with so many well-named directors.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's super weird. When I read that list, I was like, oh, this one? I guess maybe it was more popular in the theaters than I thought.
Yeah, overall, I'd give this movie. I'd give it a recommend. Yeah,
Yeah, check it out. It's cool. Like I think a little bit ago you said light recommend. It's a light recommend.
yeah, and we got at least two more movies I want to talk about before we get into the final Showa Godzilla movies, which we'll talk about next month. But until then, Nathan, what are we going to be talking about on our regularly scheduled program? Because we're getting back to the regular schedule after Stallone and Bonzilla.
Oh wow! So we're just picking some random stuff now. Okay,
Yeah,
next Tuesday we are going to be talking about Felidae, which isn't streaming anywhere, but you can find it on YouTube and the Internet Archive.
terrific. Can't wait. Uh, if you have any other questions you'd like to ask us at all, please email us over at drivein-doubleFeaturePodcast@gmail.com. Sorry, the words were stuck in my throat. Don't forget to post us on X at DIDFpod And once again, check out the Patreon at patreon.com/Drive-In Double Feature Podcast. But until next time.
Until next time.